Can a guy that was born and raised in the United Kingdom still has his UK citizenship that now lives in Portugal do creative financing in the United States? Stay tuned. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us this week on our edition of NoteSchool TV. And again, as always, we do have an amazing guest that, lived all over the world. And but before we get into that, I want you to do three things for me. Number one, if you will, hit that like button, showing us that you like what we do every week on a weekly basis. And then hit the subscribe, right? Subscribe to NoteSchool's channel if you have not already done so. And then number three, hit that bell notification. Yes, hit that bell notification so you will get the warning that we are getting ready to go live. When? Yes, every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. And if you'd like more information about NoteSchool and what we do at NoteSchool, just simply hit us up. Go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV, because at NoteSchool, we want to show you how to close more notes. So now it's time for the news. Guys, a lot happening in the real estate market. As Eddie and I always talk about, we could almost do a monthly update every week now. But as you see here on my screen today, as the rates cool, is balance returning to the housing market? So here's kind of what's been happening over the last few weeks. And let me get my pen going here. Well, let me go back here. Yeah. So as you see, medium price gain. So if we look and we go up this line here, look at what's happened with home prices over the last since 2020. We went from, what is this? Around 280, 290 in 2020. Then by the July of 2022, we were right at 350. And wow, we look at today and or as of last week, median house price is $396,000, up 12.5% year over year. So we'll see how the rest of the year goes. We'll probably have, a lot of our economists are saying that it'll kind of level out and start kind of just easing back to a more normal pace. But here's the interesting thing here as well. Home buyer mortgage prices. So guys, in 2020, in July of 2020, average mortgage payment, principal and interest, PI, was about $1,500 per month. Then we end up in 2022 or 2021. This is 2020. And we're 15 to 1650, and look at it now that that was as of July 3rd, 2342, and rates are somewhere between, as they've been closing out, somewhere between 5.25 and 5.5. So guys, we'll see. And look what's happened in 20 and 21, and then look, we'll see what happens over here. But yeah, mortgage payment on the 4-week rolling average is $2,342 a month. And then finally, inflation as of the end of June. We're looking at real inflation of somewhere around 8.8%. That is as of July 13 for June inflation. So, we'll see. We'll see what Chairman Powell does, chair of the Fed, when he meets the end of this month, when the Federal Open Market Committee meets at the end of the month. So guys, that is the news for this week. And now I want to introduce NoteSchool's Chief Visionary Officer, founder of NoteSchool, and my great friend, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. My guest today is a guy that you've traveled a long way to get here.
Yeah, I live in Portugal.
In Portugal. Our guest today is Gary Corbin, and we're going to hear a story about how Gary was an extremely active real estate investor, investing from Portugal in assets here in the United States. And now you've switched gears, and now you're buying properties specifically with seller finance terms. Pretty cool story.
Yeah.
So I think the audience would be real interested, Gary, in basically, how do you do that? How do you buy properties from another country? I mean, like literally you never came here.
Yeah. I think it started when I first got into real estate back in England. I was kind of late to the party, and it seemed everybody had taken up the patch, the local patch. And the only way I could do this was to use some leverage that I had, which was I had a background in online marketing. So I was looking for properties anywhere where I could find leads. And people used to say, well, where do you buy? What area? And I said, well, anywhere where there's nice people. Because you're going to get into a seller finance contract, you don't want to get in with a jerk, right?
Yeah.
So I had no choice really, and I did really well with that because I was picking up things that people were not doing from standard leafleting and stuff like that. So I always tried to make a kind of systemized version of the marketing. And it got really tough in the UK for regulatory stuff, and just basically there's a big downer on landlords. And I decided that enough was enough, that I would sell up and move to Portugal to retire. That was the idea.
Yeah.
But my original mentor, who's an Australian guy that actually was buying and selling in Dallas, Fort Worth, from the RTC back in the 80s, doing seller financing, he said to me, look, I've got a student that used to work with me, and he's buying out in Atlanta, and he's sort of doing really well, but he's not very good at the marketing. And I said, well, let me take a look at this, because, you know, I've never been to Atlanta, but how hard can it be?
Yeah.
And so for me, really, the fact that I'd never been there was actually a positive thing, because I was able to start targeting people in a way that maybe the other wholesalers were not targeting them. Not just the system that I was using with SMS, but even the kind of language that I was using. And even in a really hot market, which I didn't even know Atlanta was a hot market right when I started. It was just like, that's where these guys were.
Yeah.
And even with the really hot market, we were picking up deals and we were selling them to hedge funds. And I knew it wouldn't last. But for me, it was a really, really good way to understand how to deal with US real estate remotely. And all the time in the back of my mind was this idea about notes, because I'd seen you do some stuff online, maybe 2010, when we had the last crash, right? And I looked into that in the UK, and I was, you know, if only we could do it one day. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, right now I really need to sit down and work out how to do this remotely from Portugal, legitimately in the US. And this is what I've been doing since I joined NoteSchool.
So obviously you're not putting bandit signs down below the stop signs, right? That's not your method of finding properties.
Nope.
You're using texting.
Yeah.
You have perfected it very well.
Yeah, I think so.
And so you got the process defined where you can identify a property. You have boots on the ground that can do things. It's just not your boots.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Talk about that. What does that mean?
Well, partly it's because of the fact that I'm not physically in the US, and you need to have people with local kind of knowledge to know how to close the deals, and even whether a deal's a good one. You know, we don't want to be buying in Baltimore. From everything I hear. And but that process is really I'm using lists. The same as everyone else is using, but I'm using lists to identify the targets. I set those up in the SMS, and basically I just keep sending messages to these guys until they respond. And I've got a system that I've developed, which gets people to respond in a really high way. Like the rate of return of responses is really good. I think I'm doing really well with that compared to this kind of standard messaging that people seem to be doing when I see the other guys in the US doing that. And so when I came over here to the titanium class back in May, one of the things that I was looking at was like to looking at more people that I can work with to do that, because it's something that I've kind of honed. And certainly when it comes to the burned out landlords, you know, that we've been talking about, where we have a very specific message, a very specific set of people to target, I think there's just the market's wide open.
Yeah, and so you're working. You're starting to work with some of our NoteSchool internal, kind of our family, our students in that regard. I wanted to talk a little bit about the shift, because when you first joined NoteSchool, you were putting properties under contract. You guys were flipping them to
Yeah.
what we call hedge funds,
Yeah.
New York money, iBuyers,
Yeah.
whatever term somebody wants to use. And that was the market.
Yeah.
Right. And that was pretty much most everybody that were super actively buying in any market, Atlanta, Dallas, wherever they were. That was the thing. Right. And you saw a change coming.
I kind of knew it was coming already. And I didn't even think it was going to last as long as it did.
Mm-hmm.
But June 16, we got an email from the fund that we were selling to. We're not buying anymore. We're ending all contracts. And then a few days later, the website went down. And I gotta love America, right? One day they're buying a Lamborghini, the next day the website goes down because it's game over. But so I saw that coming, and I thought, whilst that's really, really working, I mean, it was kind of super simple, Eddie. You know, you get a contract, pay 100%, and get 10% on top for selling the contract to them. And of course, that was never going to last.
I want to go back. I want you to repeat that again, because I think people. I call it a false market, right? Wall Street money comes in, they're buying houses at $1 and a dime.
Yes.
Right? $1.10 of what the house is worth.
Yes.
People say that can't be true. Was that true?
Yes. And it makes sense for them because of how cheap their money was.
Yeah.
And because they were working on a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And the 10-year plan was a cap rate of about 4%. And they knew from COVID that if the tenants didn't pay, the government would step in and pay.
So you're saying you can't buy houses at a 4 cap in a 7% market?
I think they worked that one out on June 16th.
You're telling me that their spreadsheet worked, right?
But I'll tell you something interesting. The guys that were doing it, the on the ground guys, they still are trying to do it.
Yeah.
They're still telling me there are more funds out there. But we're gearing up now for the burned out landlords and the tsunami of stuff coming down the line.
Well, I'm involved in a number of masterminds that I believe encompasses probably the top 500 house buyers. I'm not actively a member of all of them, but I know active members of all of them, and I'm actively involved in a couple, right? As far as I know, I think it's a fair statement to say, and I've talked to, I believe, the biggest operators in the business. They all tell me there's not an iBuyer left.
Yeah. Right.
So the market has changed, and what you said was pretty true. People say, well, how easy was wholesaling?
The guys I worked with were pretty damn useless, if I'm really honest.
Well, I mean, if you're buying a house at retail,
it was a phone call.
If you're buying a house at retail, and the way you make a profit is you can sell it for more than retail. Let's be honest about it. It didn't take I'm not saying there's not some super skilled house buyers. That's not.
Yeah, no, sure.
But we're saying that was an easy street in your season, and you knew it was easy, and you milked that as long as you could.
Yeah.
But now you've completely switched gears, and you're going to the buying on term strategy.
Yeah.
So tell me why.
Because there's the biggest opportunity in my lifetime, and I've seen the last crash, and I was in the UK positioned to take some advantage of that at the time. Like my version of the wholesaling model was that we were all involved in something called sale and rent back, which I'm sure you know here in the US, right?
Yeah.
We would buy houses in distress pre-foreclosure, and the owner will become our tenant. It was great until the UK government made it illegal. So suddenly we had all these houses, and the interest rates were going up around 2009. It looked like they were going to go up and not down. And we were thinking, oh, how are we going to get out of this? Because it was a cash flow business. It was the same kind of model that people have been teaching for wholesaling. Yeah. That it works when it works, but when it doesn't, it's really disastrous.
Yeah.
So it was at that point that I realized that I needed to find an alternative. That's when I got into seller financing. I did my first deal in 2009. And I was like, okay, no tenants. Everyone's a buyer. Okay, I really like this. One of the things that that we had to do in the UK was kind of massage the contracts and everything to make them work for that. But I did a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And when I started looking at the US market, when I was doing the wholesaling, the guys there were saying, well, you do all this creative stuff as well. Tell us about it. So I would tell them, but it went over their heads because they didn't need it, right? Like the guys that you've been talking to, it's so easy to sell to hedge funds by 100%, sell at 110%. So the seller financing thing is now really, really important again, because you have all these people. 6-7 months ago, you guys were talking about penalty box buyers, right? You were pushing it a bit. of the penalty box buyers. Now that's like, I don't know.
Well, we
40% of
weren't
potential.
pushing it because 35% of the people that could get a mortgage before the virus can't get one today.
But that's a big.
We had
it's
a credit
big,
crunch, but once again, that house flippers were selling to Wall Street money. They weren't selling to consumers.
And why would you? Let's face it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
If somebody's paying $1.10 of what the house is worth, and you can buy it at a slight discount, or even at almost at value, then all of a sudden you don't get a big rejection rate. People get to sell their house. And so,
something else to note is that the guys that bought, the hedge fund guys, they would tell us, okay, if the margin's only 10 or 15K, we don't have to push it upstairs. So we'll just push it through. So it was a system.
All right. So when we come back, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor. One thing that's really important is like people say, I see that Gary reinvented himself. Yeah. Right. This little commercial that we have is going to really talk about what NoteSchool does to show people now what do I do and why does it matter? Yeah. We'll be back in a minute.
Well, hello, everyone. It is Brian with the teaching team here at NoteSchool, and I'm excited that I get to be the one to invite you to the upcoming Gold in Notes class. That's right. It is a one-day deeper dive class that we call Gold in Notes because of how valuable this time spent is. This is a full day that we really get to dig into the nitty-gritty, the whole world of creative financing, not just how to acquire more deals, how to get access to more capital, how to defer a lot of the taxes for us as well as for the sellers that we're talking to, and really learn how to create your own notes. And really, once you learn how to create your own notes, this is really where we spend an entire afternoon really pulling back the curtain on what the note business is, from wholesaling notes, buying and holding performing notes to really build your wealth. I'll even show you a strategy called partials, which is by far the best wealth building tool I've ever seen in the real estate space. And we're definitely going to spend some time talking about non-performing notes, which is by far the biggest opportunity in today's marketplace, solely because of the events that have happened over the past couple of years. This is when people are not paying their mortgages, and we're going to make a lot of big money from these bad debts, and we're going to help a lot of people get a second chance. It's an absolutely fantastic day. Come spend a day really dig in and discover a lot of this stuff so that you too can start building your wealth. It's a day meant to really be engaging. Bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your business problems, and we will see you there.
Welcome back. We have our guest today, Mr. Gary Corbin. Gary is from Portugal, and he has bought properties in a number of countries. And so as you've heard the story, Gary had quite a system of buying in the Atlanta area. And you guys were flipping your contracts to Wall Street money, and pretty cool system. You buy a house at retail, no discount. You flip it to Wall Street for 10% more. And it's a rinse and repeat. Yeah. And but you
sometimes they do 3 or 4 in a day.
3 or 4 in a day.
Yeah.
Wow. So obviously you saw that was too good to be true. The market's changed, and the market changed after when the virus first came out. Yes. Around May of 2020, this same thing happened. Yes. The capital markets, the lenders that loan money to the banks that make loans, the lenders that loan money to hard money lenders. Yes. In other words, they get their money from a lender too. Yep. And mortgage companies get their money from a lender. The capital markets, they call it. Hedge funds get their money from capital markets. That's why they call them hedge funds. Right? It's not not all their money. They're hedging other people.
Absolutely. That's why they don't mind spending it when they've got it.
There's a lot of talk in the market right now that those markets are really in serious turmoil. Gary is here at a NoteSchool event that we are going to be starting here in a little while. So Gary is going to get to hear me do some research of some industries I think are in really dire straits right now, and how the key to any of that is not gloating because they're in trouble. It's understanding we make money filling voids
where the
other people don't
opportunity
feel.
is. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, never waste a crisis, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
the
so
downturn is where you make the
and
money.
so that's why we're doing it. And you are now chasing these landlords with a unique position.
Yeah.
And this is a strategy that NoteSchool has kind of perfected.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about that. What is that strategy? How do you position them?
Basically, we're looking mainly for free and clear landlords who've owned the property for a period of time and probably more than 4 years. So they've got probably a capital gain that's happened in the last 4 years since the boom took off. I had a guy the other day, for example, who paid cash for $60,000 in 2010. It's now worth $400,000.
Wow.
And that guy has a problem, right? What is his problem, Eddie?
He's got a capital gains problem.
He's got a capital gains problem, yeah. So the thing is educating them, showing them there's an alternative, and that with seller financing, not only can they defer the taxes, in some cases pay no tax depending on their capital gain for that year, but they can also get a bucket of money from this and not have to deal with the tenants and basically all the things. If you guys have been landlords like I have in the past, you know how it is, and you know that you never want to do that again. So targeting these landlords basically and getting that pain and getting the knife in the wound and asking them several times.
So when you're identifying their pain is they have a big capital gains problem.
Yes.
How can you fix that problem?
You can fix that problem by selling in installments and using IRS code, which is a really helpful thing for us in the marketing, right? The fact it sounds like a scam, but it isn't.
It's not.
You can point them to the IRS code that says it in black and white. And installment sales have been around since the year dot, except that they fall out of fashion when it comes to, when it's not a recession. So basically these guys, by selling on terms, and the way that Eddie has taught us to structure these things is super clever. I wish I'd have known some of these things when I was doing it in England, like the down payment being 60 months of a partial, and then they only get paid on month 61. Damn, that's clever. I wish I would have made a ton more money if I knew that. But basically, NoteSchool's given me the ability to be able to structure these deals in a way that really works for the landlords. And it's kind of an easy sell, like paying 100% to mom and pop sellers was an easy sell. Yeah, it's an easy sell to these landlords. You just got to get in front of them, get the message to them in the right way, and say, "Hey, did you know?"
Well, so look, guys, let me tell you that Gary is talking about a strategy that anytime you've been doing something 40 years and you kind of wake up thinking about something every day, you eventually stumble into ideas that probably were right at the end of your nose. It just took you forever to figure it out. I woke up one day and realized that really this guy with this big capital gains problem, he had $60,000 invested in the house. And now 12 years later, it's worth $400,000. So if he sells it today, and he can, if he sells it today, he's got a gigantic capital gains problem.
And he's probably written that down in the past too.
Right. And so the key to it is you can say this with integrity. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. But I'm going to point you to some advantages, some tax loopholes that likely your accountant, your CPA, your attorney would not know to point you to. And that is this: you can use two tax laws and marry them together. One tax law says you don't pay your gain today because you lay your gain down and take those installments over a period of time. And if you keep those installments below a certain amount of money every year, the capital gains law says you don't start paying immediate capital gains on the first dollar you receive. You get to about 40,000 before you have to start paying capital gains. And so your customer is saying, "Gary, are you saying to me that I potentially could sell this house and sidestep, not only deferring capital gains, but literally not even having capital gains?"
Yes, and if it's joint owned in a spouse's name, they got double.
Yeah, it can go to 80 grand.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, "You're kidding me."
Yeah, well, no one's telling them that. The CPA tells them after the event, "This is how much tax you've got to pay now you sold your house."
Well, let's be honest about it. We want our CPAs to be innovative, creative thinkers, and that's not probably what they were trained for. It's not what their DNA is. Yeah. We're innovative, creative thinkers. Now that means that we rely on them to keep us straight, not do things we shouldn't do. So we're not eliminating the value of them. We're just saying the entrepreneur gets paid the most in this deal. He's the most incentivized to come up with creative strategies.
Yeah. And then any CPA that looks at those numbers can't argue with them.
We're not making it up.
Yeah.
We just stumbled into something that's kind of unique.
Yeah. No, definitely. You know? And the other option of selling where the tenant has good tenants, because if they've got bad tenants, everybody wants to get rid of bad tenants. But when they've got the good tenants, one of the golden rules of even doing lease options is you can never get the tenant to be the buyer, right? Because they're never going to pay more than it's worth. You've got a situation here now where you've got the rents are so high that for the right kind of value of house, you can actually get a tenant to be the buyer of the house based on their past payment history.
Oh, I don't think we call them a penalty box buyer, right? And that scenario was relevant even when rates were 2%, because of what's called the mortgage credit availability. The people that qualified were way less, about a third less. Well, that the mortgage underwriting is still going down, right? But now you have the affordability factor, And by the way, everybody quotes, 30-year mortgages, and everybody always quotes Fannie and Freddie, although 55% of the market is Fannie and Freddie, which is the best rates. And everybody else is getting a mortgage at a higher rate, right? So even when we quote saying that rates are, today, in the high fives, right around 6%, the Fed is kind of making abundantly clear to us. I wonder when the Fed chairman says that he doesn't refer to real estate appreciation. He refers to it as real estate inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said his number one job is to fight inflation.
Yeah.
I think a man could pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, they've only got one way to go. And that's back to quantitative easing and lower rates, but they'll take them a while to get there.
Look, the market has a big disruption in it, Gary.
Yeah.
You've joined our community. You are deeply involved with us. Thank you for coming to see us all the way from Portugal.
Thank you, Eddie. It's a pleasure to be here.
All the way from Portugal. And we're excited to have some fun with you and really go through and take all these concepts to a deeper level. Just before you leave today, I thought it might be fun to kind of talk a little bit about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're in a kind of a community now.
Yes.
It's not a cult.
Yeah.
We're just guys that don't follow the rules just like everybody else, because Warren Buffett doesn't follow the rules. Warren Buffett says, be a contrarian, find the void in the market and that other people don't know how to fix, and go figure out how to fix it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. So talk about that culture and like why that's valuable to you.
It's also really, really hard in my experience to find that generally in real estate education. And I haven't really been super involved in real estate education because much of it, when you look at it and scratch the surface, there's nothing there. It's just vapor. And the fact that I've known about Eddie for so many years and that he's been around for so many years, and I don't know, you just get a feel about people. And when I joined NoteSchool, it was pretty much what I expected, and then some. And even if I stayed doing seller financing in the UK, the stuff that I've learned from the community, and even just some of the, like the 60 months, the seller only gets paid on month 61, just stuff like that is just worth its weight in gold. And the caliber of other people that I've met here as well has been, really, really, really good. Everyone's at a level that you can just have a conversation with and they know what you're doing. We're not having to explain it very much to anybody, are we?
Well, we're fortunate that we're training. Our messaging is attracting people that are serious about it. They may be at different levels. They may not have
different experience, but that doesn't mean
different level of experience. But the level of professionalism, it's. I think I've had many guys in the real estate info space come to NoteSchool events and see our audience.
Yeah.
And they've always commented, like, how do you attract such good people?
I think it's like cream, right? Rises to the top. Hopefully,
I believe it's NoteSchool TV. if you're coming to watch NoteSchool TV and you're just wanting people just to tell you whatever's on Facebook and just, you know, I call it happy timing somebody.
Yeah.
The market is changing. We're not gloating that the market's changing, although we do really better when the market changes.
Having trouble sleeping right now, though, I have to say.
You are?
Yeah. I need a bigger napkin. Yeah, it literally is going to be a tsunami of opportunity.
It is, and there's been a lot said about NoteSchool and in a very positive way in the last month. I have a lot of people that have given us a shout out, very influential in the marketplace and on social media. Thank you. But Gary, I think that you represent a big market out there of people that were doing things a certain way. The market's changed, and instead of being scared, you're now excited.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you have quickly figured out how to reposition yourself to go chase this, and now you're telling sellers you're going to show them how to sell a property and either delay taxes or possibly avoid taxes. That's a pretty good pitch.
Yep. Especially if they've had tenants for a while.
No kidding. All the way from Portugal.
Yes. England originally. Yeah, you can tell from the accent they're not really Portuguese, right?
Yeah.
England originally, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Gary, thank you. We're glad to have you. Our audience is so glad to get to hear from you today and hear your incredible story.
And thanks for inviting me, Eddie. I'm excited to be here and at this event as well. So I was really looking forward to another 4 days of good stuff.
Awesome. Well, that's it, guys. This is another week of NoteSchool TV, and I hope you enjoyed the story. I really got to enjoy being part of this story today, and I get to enjoy working with Gary on a regular basis. And he's a smart guy, and I think he's making smart decisions. See you soon.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us for this week's edition of NoteSchool TV. You can see how our guest today, Gary Corbin, man, he's a great guy. He's done a lot of business. He's a smart guy. And we appreciate you, Gary, being part of NoteSchool and what we do here and bringing, folks up to speed on what it's like to do business from anywhere in the world in the creative finance space in the United States. So thanks again, guys. Remember, noteschool.com/TV. And what's our motto? We show you how to close more deals. As we always say at this time, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.